REAPER 5.97 is here, and there's so much to talk about. So in this update, we have some great new features like ARA2 support, which makes editing with Melodyne so much faster. We got a ton of video features that have made me happy over the past few months doing the betas. Some changes to ReaComp and just a ton of other bug fixes and little refinements. And before we get started, I should say that everything in this video is my own thoughts, what I've seen on the forums, my own research. So this is not endorsed by Kakos or REAPER developers. They don't tell me what to say in these videos. I don't get paid by them. I get paid by you guys by watching the videos and by my patrons at patreon.com/thereaperblog. If you want to support this series of videos or any of the content that I make, please consider being a patron. I have some exclusive things there for the fans, and really appreciate any support you guys can give. All right, so let's get into it. So first on the list is ARA support. ARA2 compatible plugins can now be used in REAPER. They would be VST3 version plugins of things like the latest version of Melodyne. There is also Revoice and maybe one or two others. It's not a technology that's very widespread yet, but for the plugins that do support it, this is going to be really helpful. Now, ARA stands for Audio Random Access, and the main benefit that I see is that it's so much faster to import your audio into pitch correction software. So if you have ever used an old version of Melodyne, it was such a pain to have to transfer each track of audio into the plugin one at a time in real time. You know how easy it is to stack up vocals and then to get them all pitch corrected. It was an all-day process. So ARA2 solves the biggest problem, and that is just getting it in. And if we make a change in the track, it is reflected in the plugin as well. So I've got a vocal here. We're going to open up Melodyne. Got it here. I installed the latest update. You want to make sure that you have version 4 of Melodyne installed. I'm using the essential version, which is just super basic. But as you can see, ARA has already taken over. It's imported that audio automatically. You can see here the edge of my region or my item. If I adjust it, it is adjusted here as well. Yeah, so that's the basic thing with importing the audio into Melodyne. It's really, you just load the plugin and after a second, it's already inserted. Awesome. If you had an effects chain here already, Melodyne would default to the first plugin in the chain. That's 99% of the time, that's where you want it to be. You want your pitch correction done first. It also needs the audio from the track directly, so you don't want anything in between the audio and this plugin. As well with this, we can export pitch out of the plugin. So ARA import into project with notes, tempo, and notes and tempo. I'm just going to do notes in this case. And so it's made a new track, and I've got the pitch data that it's read into a new track. The other option there was to export that as a MIDI file. So if you choose that, it will ask you where to save that file. So yeah, I'll probably do another video. Maybe I'll edit a full track using Melodyne Essential with ARA support in REAPER. But for now, I'm just going to leave that section there. Next, I have a few miscellaneous changes that I'd like to cover. The first one is removing effects chain actions from the action list. If you have saved effects chains, I showed this quite a long time ago. Let's open up the effects browser. So in the effects chains folder here, you can save things like, I don't know, dynamic de-esser. Let's save this. You right click and you can go to create shortcut, and you don't have to input a key. You can just press cancel. And now I've got dynamic de-esser effects chain in my action list. And if I don't want to keep this in my action list, I can just click on delete. So it used to be that you would have to right-click in here, and so if I do create shortcut and cancel, and if I want to remove that, I would have to delete it through the effects chain section of the browser. So now we can do it right from the action list. Next is a new option for the performance meter. So we can show the video processing load. I actually don't have a video loaded in this project. Then I switch over to another tab where I do have a video, and the video is idle. But if I show the video and open the performance meter, we'll see that the video load will work here. And so this is a fairly heavy project. It's generating visuals in real time based on audio. That's something I'll show you a little bit later. But as you can see in the performance meter, there is a video load option. The Mac version now uses a newer development toolchain for release. Essentially means it's updated internally and it's more compatible. It's faster. There's a lot of weird Mac-only bugs that people were dealing with should be fixed here. Things like action list scrolling. So like scrolling in the action list without this version, with the default version of Reaper, just the last version ago, that was really slow, at least on my system. Same with this scroll bar in the preferences was super slow for no reason really. This also improves some compatibility with videos and audio unit version 3 plugins. This was something that was developed kind of in parallel for like the past year, originally to try to sort out some video issues, and then once there was quite a bit of data on whether it was better than the existing version, that's now the main version. So I think that most users on Mac will find that this new version runs significantly better. Up next, we have several new updates to ReaComp, the built-in Reaper compressor. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Dan Worrall did a fantastic video on what was wrong with ReaComp and compared it to some other plugins. And based on that video, just last week, Justin from Kakos fixed ReaComp, basically solved all those problems. Some of the issues that were discussed in that video were the way that the ratio knob works here, where it used to be like from here to here was from 1 to 4 to 1, and now you get about almost 50% of the control dedicated to the ratios that matter the most. Most of the time you're using this range from like 1.2 to 1 up to like maybe 10 to 1. But once you get past like 20 to 1, up to an infinity to 1, there's very little difference. And so there's less priority in the usable range of the control dedicated to areas that matter the least. So yeah, this first half of the ratio knob is going to be easier to use. The same with the RMS size. So instead of having 5 milliseconds being down here, it's now quarter inch up there. We get more range of movement for the smaller numbers, and then the ridiculously large RMS sizes get a little less priority. The feedback mode for the detector input was incorrect. It used to take the signal after the wet and dry controls, which means that you couldn't use the wet and dry controls properly in order to feed the compression circuit. So now if you choose feedback pre-fader, it now goes before the wet-dry faders in the signal chain, and so it works more like other compressors. You can still have access to that old version here. The last big problem that ReaComp had was its anti-aliasing sort of oversampling mode just didn't work. Dan went into great detail about that, demonstrating how and why things weren't working right. So Justin decided to just hide that function None of the default presets used it. And so that button used to be right here. It didn't work. So you're not going to see that until you go to an old saved preset. Like if I choose one of my presets that I saved here, I had the 4x oversampling or anti-aliasing turned on. So this is hidden until you load a preset that uses it, and then you'll see that option in these old stock presets. So this old anti-aliasing option, until it's properly implemented, it's hidden. So that's ReaComp and all the new things. There's a new JS plugin called Video Sample Peaker, and this is used to generate visuals based on the audio. So you put this on, it's got quite a bit of latency. It's like 1 second look ahead. Using that with some other things like this oscilloscope, you can generate visuals. I will get back to this later on in the video. The next set of changes deals with stretch markers. There's a new transient optimized and no pre-echo reduction stretch marker mode. And this can be accessed on each item through the media item properties. You can also change this in project settings. If we open up media item properties, we can go to the mode button here. There's balanced, tonal optimized, transient optimized, and no pre-echo reduction. These will all sound a little bit different. We can also change those settings in project settings. Stretch marker mode can be set to balanced, tonal optimized, transient optimized, or no pre-echo reduction. These options remain the same whether you're using different sample engines. If you're using stretch markers in a project, give those new options a try. I don't have any recommendations at this time. From here on, it's all going to be video stuff. There are so many video changes. This feels like the biggest change to video since video editing came out in version 5. So I'm really excited about this stuff. I've been actually using a bunch of it for the past few months in the pre-releases. Video performance has been great. I've been able to do more stuff creatively, more stuff in less time, less lag, and fewer crashes, all those sorts of things. So I'm really happy with it. Let's open up one of these video processors I have here. And so here are all the built-in presets, all of these ones. Justin's put in sort of categories as part of the file names or the preset names and organized these so it's a little bit easier. The main ones that you're going to be using when you're editing are often like item fades affect video or track opacity zoom pan. As well, a lot of these have been updated. These improved all the built-in presets. There are now 2 chroma key presets, so if you're doing any green screen or blue screen with RGB or YUV color spaces, then there are 2 optimized presets for that. And I've set up a little demo here with some of the different new presets included with this version of REAPER. So RGB Decompose is a way to separate red, green, and blue layers like this and actually move them in position. Really cool. So you can change the X and the Y offset of each of those isolated layers. Pretty cool. There is Shadow, Midtone, Highlight, RGB. This is your main color grading tool now. This gives you control over RGB for lows, mids, and highs. Shadows, mid-range, and highlights. There's an option to show the curve, which is this little gray box in the corner. And then we can change the steepness of each of these frequency bands, if you will. So here's before, here's after. Let's make this bigger. Okay, so what I like to do with this is to evenly reduce the shadows just to make like this black curtain behind me a little blacker. I could change the color of this completely by changing I can make all the sort of black or dark areas red, and we can change the steepness here to adjust how much of an overlap there is. So a really steep overlap is just going to do those darker areas. So you can go for like a really moody look, horror movie look, Instagram look, whatever you want to call it, or just something kind of neutral like this. Double click to reset any of them. If I want to reduce sort of the yellowness in the room, there's not a lot I can do because the wall is off-white like that. But I can add more blue if I want less yellow, or I can move the red and green down evenly, which will effectively make the blues look like there's too much. If I increase all of them by the same amount, it's just going to make that particular color range a little bit brighter. That works pretty well. I think maybe a little less blue in the highlights. I can go too far and it's just a very strong yellow tint. Got kind of a purpley color here. I think you understand the basics here. We also have Histogram RGB, which gives us a nice little graph here of what's happening in the colors. So here's the overall grayscale histogram showing overall brightness. There's a lot of black areas in this footage, so there's quite a lot happening in the lower end of the spectrum. None of the colors are clipping. Well, maybe this red is saturated, but that's fine. And any changes we do to like shadows, highlights, midtones, this actually is reflected here in real time or semi-real time. Let me play it back so we could see frame droppage and stuff. It's pretty good. It is dropping some frames, but it's not too bad. Yeah, the histogram is not something you need to have on all the time. All right, it's bothering me to look at that. Okay, there's the peephole wipe or vignette. And so you can just change the size and you can fade it down to black through a circle. Then there's decimate frame rate, which is a really weird effect. You can use this to kind of show a blurry movement. It's hard to say like why, but it's kind of a cool effect. If you're interested in the video processor effects, there's a lot of new stuff here. As well, you'll find a lot of new presets on the forum, and I've made a whole bunch and updated all of my existing ones. There's a lot of little bug fixes that I need to do. I will update those soon. Things like the text overlay with drop shadow. So I mentioned some dropped frames a little bit earlier, and so there are some new options that we can try to reduce that sort of thing, or just speed up performance, get better CPU performance, things like that. So if we right click in the video window, there's performance tweaks, experimental, and we have video processor multiprocessing, prefetch, video cache. We can show underruns during playback as green frames instead of just going black or something like that. And we can use this option, aggressively update video during arrange, edits, or scrolls. That's a good option if you are doing Foley or sound design or something like that, where you're repeatedly looping things or you need to jump around really quickly and you're not using any video effects or you're not using any sort of overlays in the monitor effects chain like I am with these borders and things. So lots of things to experiment with there. These are global settings, so you may need to tweak things depending on the project. And you can also see some info about the current video, what the frame size is, the color space, how much CPU or render timing, whatever that means, is happening here. You may also notice this option, send MIDI CC control messages when mouse dragging in video. This is amazing. I'll show you this in this other project here. I'm going to grab my text generator this one here. And so I have this option enabled, send MIDI CC control messages. I'm going to take the X position, that's left and right, and go to param, learn, and in here, I'm just going to double right click. That's the secret. And we get this pop-up window, video window drag X, and I'm going to set it so that only when the track or item is selected. You can do it so that it only happens when the effect configuration is visible. I like this option because it's only when the item is selected. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to take the Y position and do the same thing. MIDI learn, double right click, drag Y, and OK. So I'm going to select my item, and now I can just drag the position anywhere I want. It's so helpful. Like, I cannot stress how annoying it was to position text in a very specific spot using the two controls, especially because like when you change the size, often the position needs to be tweaked. So now it's just much easier. I can just drag and drop, and there, it's aligned. I could even write that as automation if I wanted. That's a really cool sort of workaround for dealing with this video processor window. It's flexible, like it's not going to move unless I have that item selected, which means I can use the same MIDI links for multiple things. I can save this into my template, so I only have to set that up once. You can also do that with mouse wheel. I found it a little bit weird, but it's probably just this Apple mouse that's weird. So let's do mouse wheel. And so text size with mouse wheel. It's not too bad for that. So I highly recommend trying that out. It's a really great addition. So let's quickly look at that generating oscilloscope plugin. So this is my background color and my pink layer in my my video here. So in mode 0, it's a horizontal line. On mode 1, it's a vertical line. Mode 2 is a circular scope. You can change the point count, kind of how detailed, I guess you could say. I'm going to turn off these other tracks, hopefully without breaking everything. So I'm going to put it on this one. And then there's like blitter persist, which is just a thing to have these blurred sort of echoes of the oscilloscope. I've got that automated here, so bypass that and I can turn that off. Can change the position, changes the height. Yeah, so that was the oscilloscope and a few of the options there. I'll also show you the spectrum analyzer. Looks like this. We can change the scrolling speed, we can change the hue. Many different options here, just, experiment with it. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you with the video stuff. So here's the changelog. This is all the stuff that I've talked about so far, more or less. I skimmed through some of the video stuff, but this is the full changelog here, and there is so much in this update. Way too much to talk about, way too much for me to learn and share in a day. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. There is a playlist of all the other What's New in Reaper series videos. You can check that out in the links below and in the end card at the end of this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.